Lexington Gold has appointed Mark Greenwood as non-executive director of the Gold Exploration and Development Company with projects in South Africa and the USA. So, what does this appointment bring to the business development of the company? I'm delighted to be joined by Mark. So, Mark, it's rare for me to do an interview about the arrival of a NED, but your appointment has generated unusual interest. Why do you think that is?
Well, I can't really understand quite why myself, although, people have strange opinions about stranger things. But I can only assume that perhaps it's my emerging markets stockbroking background, number one, that perhaps might be of interest to shareholders in the sense that, and potential shareholders in the sense that I understand. Well, I'd like to think that I understand a little bit more than the man on the street how to present these things. Let's put it that way. And I think the other point is that I've got quite a lot of shares in the company as well, and I think it's very important that the board is seen to be aligning with the interests of the shareholders. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that so far they haven't. On the contrary, it's been an honour to talk to the existing members of the board, some of whom I've got to know quite well. But I think that perhaps they think, and it was their idea, not mine, that I joined the board, that maybe there's an element of emerging markets, stockbroking, presentation, investor value that maybe I can help to get across to the investing public.
Okay, so it's a two-way street. So what is it about Lexington Gold that attracted you to the company and inspired you to become an 8% shareholder?
Ounces, lots of them. I mean, potentially lots of them. Obviously, originally, when I got on board, the most of those ounces were going to be in the United States of America. And of course, as we know, over the last 2 to 3 years, they've done some very successful drilling campaigns and proved up some interesting resources there that I believe can potentially be expanded on. But when the opportunity of South Africa was mentioned to me, it just completely blew me away. I thought to myself, well, I mean, how is this going to actually turn out? Because the numbers compared to America, I mean, you're looking at sort of America is about 220,000 ounces of JORC, and South Africa is potentially sort of 90 million, as much as, with 6.2 million already proven up in a joint venture with the largest gold producer in South Africa. So what's not to like, really? And I think that that's the challenge, with the gold price going nuts. I mean, when I bought into Lexington, the gold price was 1,500, and that's only about 3 or 4 years ago. And now it's just touched 4,000 today. So, there are loads of reasons, really, why I felt that when I was asked if I'd like to join the board and could I help to add something, well, yes, and those are the reasons. It's ounces, hope, and maybe a little bit of investment sort of knowledge.
And a lot of nous, and yes, extraordinary times where the price of gold is currently keeps reaching those new record highs. So you talk about, what you can add to the business. So the obvious follow-up question is, what can you bring to the development curve of the company now? You've told us about your previous experience and that you're in alignment, but what can you do now?
Well, I mean, I think it's banging on people's doors and saying this is what we've got. And let's put it this way. I think that, maybe we've been not the world's greatest door bangers over the last 2 to 3 years, but that's not to say that we've not been doing all of the right things. But I think there's also an issue here of a little bit of focus. And in the end, I think that the company's going to have to decide. And obviously, it's not my decision, it's going to be a joint decision. But I think the company's going to have to decide where its bread is buttered. And, the moment management time, senior management time is split between two jurisdictions, one of which is a very safe established jurisdiction, the United States of America, and the other one is a very well-known gold jurisdiction that, from a civil law standpoint, has got an excellent record, which is South Africa. I mean, the courts still work there, and it's rated highly as a destination for investment capital, certainly in natural resources. So I think the question is going to come eventually, well, where do we want to be? So I'm sure that this is something that's going to get discussed relatively early, if it hasn't been discussed already at board level, as to, where do we want to focus and where's the best place for us to be putting money in the ground.
So you have the potential to influence the company's pathway to progress. So what should the company's focus be in terms of project priority, partnerships, and possible acquisitions?
Well, the no-brainer that's already on the table is the Harmony Gold thing. I mean, why it is that people or the investing public have not latched onto the fact that we already have a JORC compliant reserve in a mine in South Africa, a deep mine in South Africa, with grades of 6 grams a ton, with 6 million ounces of potential reserves there. Why people have not latched onto that the way that they've been latching on to much smaller producers, or people with much smaller JORCs, is beyond me. But that's the obvious one. So I mean, from what I've seen from all the announcements that have been made recently, there is a lot of work going on in the background in terms of a scoping study, a pre-feasibility study. Because the other thing that people aren't quite getting about that particular thing is that the infrastructure is already in place. So normally when you dig a shaft in South Africa, you have to dig it from scratch to 1,500 to 2,000 meters, which is an enormously expensive undertaking. With this one, the shafts are already there, the lifting gear is already there, the processing plant is already there. So, instead of having to spend and invest $2 to $2.5 billion to get a deep mine going in South Africa, actually, this project can be done massively on the cheap by comparison. Okay, it's true we're going to have to find ways of financing that, but I don't think anybody's giving us the credit that Lexington deserves for what it's actually got on its doorstep at the present moment in time. And that doesn't include, the more green virgin sites like Kroonstad, which on its own could be another 60 to 90 million ounce gold field, all on its own, never mind 6 million ounces. The potential for a lot more than that is there. And what's more, most of the concessions, aside from the joint venture with Harmony, are actually shallow gold as well. So you don't have to dig 2 mile deep shafts. You can do it with, effectively, I don't know what the technical term is because I'm not a mining engineer, but apparently you go down gradually in a circular shaft to get to the gold without having to dig a big shaft and run a railway down and bring the stuff up by rail rather than lifts. I don't know what they call it. I'm sure that I'll be corrected when I join my first board meeting, which is going to be later on this month. But that's the general concept. So as I said at the beginning, it's all about ounces, and it's still about ounces, 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 ounces. We've got some in the bag, some in America, a lot more in a JV with a very reputable gold company in South Africa. And we have the potential to add an awful lot more with the sites that we have, the greenfield sites, which we obviously need and want to drill.
So you mentioned you'll soon be having your first board meeting. You're talking about knocking on doors. I'm going to ask a bit of a cheeky question, but how are you getting remunerated for your time and experience and door knocking?
Well, door knocking, I mean, obviously, if I come to London and knock on your door, Sarah, I dare say I might have to, I might be able to claim an airfare or two. But, having said all that, I did not expect in any way, shape, or form to be paid when I joined the board. There is a very small non-executive pouch, if you like, which obviously is welcome. I'll be giving a lot of my time to this because this investment to me is very, very important to myself and to the future of my family as well. So I will be taking it with the utmost seriousness. But as I say, the focus is really on adding value to the shares that I have. and I can't sell the shares because I'm restricted from selling the shares. So, effectively joining the board has locked me in. So I've got to do a good job and help in whatever way I possibly can to add value to a company which I think really deserves having lots of value added to it.
So you talk about perhaps how the stock isn't on certain shareholders' radars, or the market hasn't fully appreciated how much value this company can create. But from my point of view, I don't think your website is very good at all. So I'm just wondering, perhaps a bit more corporate credibility if that website, your shop window is refreshed.
Yeah, well, it's funny you should mention that, Sarah, because as you can see, I've got quite a lot of grey hair. And when I was stockbroking in the 80s and 90s, we used to write little pieces of paper and send them out to people. And obviously, a lot's moved on since then. And I think it's very, very important to make sure that we are reaching a generation of investors now who are much more reliant on the internet than they are on stockbrokers like me, because there's an awful lot of stuff out there. And, that's information flow. If we're to avoid ridiculous and idiotic speculation, has to emanate from the company. So the more stuff that we can put onto our website, the more information we can put onto our website, if I might use the expression, the sexier we can make our website, and the sexier we can make our interactions with social media. I think that's only a one-way journey. It has to be better for the company, better for investors, and better for the 32.5 million shares that I've got in the company as well. So, we're all on the same hymn sheet here. It's really, really important.
Okay, so just two more questions, if I may, Mark. Now, I know that you're located in Thailand. Would Lex be a good fit for the Stock Exchange of Thailand? It's celebrating its 50th anniversary. It's well established, and it's hardly a backwater exchange.
It's very interesting that you should say that. The answer probably is not. Number one, I think since I have been in Thailand, there have only been three companies that have been in natural resources. Two of them were tin miners, because there's a lot of tin in the south of Thailand, in Phuket, tin dredging. And there was another one that had a zinc mine on the border with Burma. None of them are currently listed. And sometimes local gold and resource miners run by foreigners have had a bit of a problem in terms of dealing with the local authorities. So I don't think that there will be a rush to list Lexington, which has absolutely zero to do with Thailand, on the Thai Stock Exchange. I would suggest that maybe Canada would be a much more interesting place to do, or possibly Australia, where the mentality of the investors there is much more favorable towards natural resources company. But we've already got a listing in Frankfurt anyway, I understand, and we're in the process of getting a full listing on the OTC in the United States. So I think we're pretty well catered for up to now.
So, in a nutshell, to summarize everything that you've told me, bearing in mind you haven't had your first board meeting yet, but also bearing in mind, you are a significant shareholder and already spoken to management, how can the company create and crystallize shareholder value and compound returns, particularly as you're looking after the future wealth of your family?
Well, this is, I think, banging on the doors that we mentioned before, and there are lots of doors that I've not banged on yet in Thailand, and I do know people here. Lots of doors I can bang on in London, so I'll be seeing you in the not too distant future, Sarah. But I think, the point is. Directing the spend that we spend to the places where there is most bang for the buck. And I think that we sort of talked about with the dichotomy between what we have in America versus the potential of South Africa, where to spend the money. And as far as I'm concerned, and one or two of my friends, if we have to tip more money into this at some stage of the game, we're happy to do that, because me and my friends, the ones who have invested together with me, are actually just as keen on this thing as I am. So yeah, we need bang for the buck. I think the management that we've got are very professional. They know what they're doing. They've been studying what we've got in South Africa ever since we acquired the assets there 2.5 years ago. And I'm sure that we'll be able to hit the ground running when it comes to developing them. And we are in the process, as we've talked of before, of getting things together with the joint venture with Jelani, which we've revived from effectively almost dead. You know, it's a living thing now. They meet all the time to discuss how to take this thing forward.
Very exciting. I look forward to our next conversation, Mark. Mark Greenwood, Non-Executive Director of Lexington Gold. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for your time, Sarah. Pleasure to meet you.